The room was all power, money, and quiet judgment, until everything snapped. Under bright chandeliers, a small girl sat at a billionaire's table crying so hard she could barely breathe. Glasses froze midair, faces tightened with irritation, not concern. A black man in a catering apron stepped forward, hands open, voice calm. But the room turned on him like he was the problem. Security moved first. Whispers followed. He wasn't seen as help, he was seen as a threat. Then the girl screamed one sentence that froze every rich face in the room. What none of them realized was this: by pushing him away, they had just made the one mistake that would cost them everything. Comment and tell us where you're watching from. And subscribe, because stories like this demand to be heard. Marcus woke up before the city decided who it would be kind to that day. Mornings were quiet by design. Quiet kept things steady. He moved through the small apartment with practiced care, making sure nothing startled his son. Caleb noticed everything. Sound stayed with him longer. Lights felt harsher, louder, like the world didn't know how to turn itself down. Marcus Johnson had learned how to slow life down. Measured steps, steady hands, no wasted motion. He didn't ask the world to be gentle. He only asked it not to interfere. Caleb Johnson trusted routine more than promises. Shoes lined up the same way. Breakfast never changed. When the system rushed, Caleb shut down, and Marcus absorbed the pressure instead. Schools labeled too fast, meetings ended too quickly, and courts asked questions they already thought they knew the answers to, especially when the father looked like Marcus. Across the city, power ran on schedules and certainty. Evelyn moved through her world surrounded by agreement. People listened when she spoke. Decisions bent in her direction. But at home, control meant nothing. Lily needed quiet, patience, and space, things money couldn't force. Lily Carter wasn't broken. She was overwhelmed. Evelyn Carter knew that even when she didn't know how to fix it. Admitting she was lost felt like admitting failure, and failure wasn't something her world allowed. Thomas moved easily between rooms and decisions. He knew which doors stayed closed and which truths stayed buried, especially when they protected his name. Thomas Carter believed order mattered more than people, and image mattered more than intent. When things threatened the surface, he handled them quietly. Margaret watched from a distance with confidence shaped by authority. She believed stability came from control, not effort. Margaret Wilson didn't need to raise her voice. Systems already spoke for her. Even the courts felt predictable, like they'd already chosen a side before anyone spoke. Judge Robert Hayes believed in procedure, not emotion. Files followed patterns, and patterns rarely favored men like Marcus Johnson. None of this felt connected yet. But tension never announces itself when it's building. It waits. And somewhere between routine and power, between silence and control, something had already started moving toward collision, quietly, deliberately, and with no intention of ending peacefully. What happened that night didn't stay contained inside the ballroom. It followed Marcus home, into his mornings, into every quiet moment he shared with Caleb. The world had seen him step forward, had watched security close in, had decided what he was before hearing why he moved at all. Marcus Johnson felt it in the way doors closed faster, in the way conversations stopped when he entered rooms he was never meant to occupy. At Evelyn's request, Marcus returned, this time not as staff, but as someone invited into a space that didn't trust him. Lily responded to his presence in ways no specialist had managed. Her breathing slowed, her hands unclenched. The chaos inside her softened when Marcus stayed still, when he didn't demand, didn't rush. Evelyn Carter noticed the change immediately. She also noticed the looks, the whispers, the way help from a black man was tolerated only when it could be controlled. Thomas Carter watched everything with practiced calm. He smiled when Marcus entered, nodded when Evelyn spoke, and quietly tightened the perimeter. Rules appeared where none had existed before. Access narrowed. Schedules changed without warning. Marcus felt it happen in layers, never loud enough to accuse, never obvious enough to challenge, just enough to remind him he was temporary. Caleb felt the distance before Marcus admitted it. Routines broke. School meetings ran longer. Calls from Margaret Wilson increased, wrapped in concern but sharpened by judgment. She spoke of stability, of structure, of environments, better suited for a child like Caleb. She spoke as if Marcus wasn't already giving everything he had. "You're overstepping," Thomas said one afternoon, voice smooth, confident, spoken just loud enough to be heard. No one corrected him. No one questioned why Thomas spoke with authority he hadn't earned. Marcus stood there, absorbing the weight of it, aware that reacting would be used against him later. Bystanders filled the halls. Staff, advisors, people trained to notice problems and trained even better to ignore them. They saw Lily respond to Marcus. They saw tension rise around him. They chose quiet. Silence felt safer than truth. "This isn't your place," Margaret said during a call that sounded polite to anyone listening closely enough to miss the threat. Marcus didn't argue. He knew how systems worked. He had seen schools dismiss Caleb's needs as inconvenience. He had watched meetings end before he finished explaining. The pattern was familiar. Patience until compliance, pressure until surrender. Evelyn tried to intervene, but even her influence bent under scrutiny. Every decision she made in Marcus's favor was documented, questioned, framed as emotional rather than necessary. Lily Carter improved quietly, steadily, but improvement became a liability when it didn't follow approved methods. Thomas leaned in harder. He restricted Marcus's access. He questioned his judgment in front of others. He framed concern as liability, compassion as risk. "We're watching you," Thomas said, tone measured, certain. That was when the tension stopped building and started pressing down. Marcus missed Caleb's school moment for the first time. The silence in the apartment felt heavier than any confrontation. Caleb Johnson noticed. He always did. The world was asking Marcus to choose, help the child everyone saw, or protect the one they refused to understand. And then came the setup, a public appearance, carefully arranged, bright lights, crowds, no space to retreat. Lily was brought in already overwhelmed. Marcus felt it immediately, the sound, the pace, the way no one slowed down. He moved toward her instinctively, but security shifted before he reached her. Thomas stood back, watching. "Step away," a voice ordered, sharp and final. Lily's distress escalated. Evelyn froze between authority and fear. Bystanders recorded instead of helping. Marcus was blocked, blamed, framed as the cause instead of the solution. "This is on you," Thomas said quietly, confidence turning cruel. The moment stretched. Lily broke down fully, surrounded by people who believed control mattered more than care. Marcus stood powerless, knowing exactly how this would be used against him, against Caleb, against everything he tried to protect. The system had closed in, and everyone watching believed the worst was over. They didn't know the damage they'd just done, or how close they were to losing control for good. The room was built for control, not care. Bright lights pressed down from every angle, stripping away softness, leaving nowhere to hide. Lily's breathing turned sharp and uneven the moment the crowd closed in. Sound bounced off polished walls. Movement came too fast. Everything Marcus had learned from years of protecting Caleb surged through him at once. Marcus stepped forward instinctively. Not rushed, not loud, just steady. He saw it immediately, the way Lily's hands clenched, the way her eyes searched for quiet that didn't exist. This wasn't confusion. It was overload. The same kind that shut Caleb down when adults ignored warning signs. Before Marcus could reach her, security shifted. The line tightened. Bodies formed a barrier like it had been rehearsed. Thomas watched from a distance, arms relaxed, face calm. He looked confident, too confident for a situation spiraling out of control. "You need to step back," a guard snapped. Lily's distress spiked. Her cries cut through the room, sharp and raw. People turned, not to help, but to record. Phones rose, whispers spread. Evelyn froze between instinct and image. She knew something was wrong, but power had rules, and breaking them came at a cost she'd avoided her entire life. "This is your responsibility," Thomas said quietly, eyes never leaving Marcus. Marcus absorbed it without reacting. He'd seen this move before. Blame first, isolation next. The system always followed the same rhythm. He glanced at Lily again, then at the exits being subtly blocked. This wasn't chaos. It was design. Security closed in tighter. Lily collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed, shaking, alone in a room full of people. Marcus felt the anger rise, but he held it. Losing control was exactly what they wanted. Then something shifted. From the side of the room, a voice cut through the noise, calm, firm, impossible to ignore. "Stop everything!" Judge Robert Hayes said. The words landed heavier than the alarms that followed. Conversations died instantly, phones lowered. The authority in his tone wasn't emotional, it was procedural, final. Judge Hayes stepped forward, eyes scanning the scene with practiced precision. He didn't look at Marcus first. He looked at Lily, then at the security positions, then at Thomas, whose posture stiffened just enough to betray him. "Who authorized this environment?" Judge Hayes asked. Thomas opened his mouth, then hesitated. For the first time that night, confidence didn't come easily. The room waited. "This is a controlled situation," Thomas replied, forcing calm into his voice. The judge didn't respond immediately. He gestured instead. Screens along the wall flickered on, security footage queued and ready. A timeline appeared. Messages, emails, schedule changes, approved overrides. Patterns that had been invisible minutes earlier now sat in plain sight. "This was intentional," Judge Hayes said evenly. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's face drained of color as she read what she hadn't been allowed to see. Every restriction, every denied accommodation, every decision rerouted through Thomas Carter's name. Thomas took a step back. "That's not how this looks," he said too quickly. The footage kept rolling. Lily's prior improvements, Marcus's documented recommendations, internal objections quietly dismissed. Even communications involving Margaret Wilson surfaced polite language masking, calculated pressure. Judge Hayes turned then, finally, toward Marcus Johnson. "You tried to intervene," he said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded once. "Nothing more." "You were blocked," the judge continued. Marcus nodded again. Silence settled, thick and uncomfortable. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a record. Thomas's composure collapsed in stages. His breathing changed. His hands clenched. The room that once protected him now watched, calculating distance. "This ends now," Judge Hayes said. Security shifted, not toward Marcus, but away from him. Lily was lifted carefully, space finally made. The noise dropped. The lights dimmed. Marcus knelt beside her, grounding the chaos without saying a word. The power in the room had moved, not gradually, irreversibly. And everyone watching understood the same thing at once. This moment could never be undone. The consequences did not unfold quietly. They arrived with clarity and finality. Thomas was removed from his position the same day. Access revoked, authority stripped. His decisions were no longer shielded by polished language or internal silence. Investigators documented every restriction, every denied accommodation, every moment where control had been disguised as order. Thomas Carter did not step down. He was exposed. The power he relied on vanished the moment the truth entered the record. Margaret's influence collapsed alongside him. The legal pressure she once applied so confidently no longer carried weight. Her claims were reviewed, challenged, and dismissed. Margaret Wilson was forced to accept what she had tried to deny all along. Authority does not equal understanding. The system she trusted to speak for her had finally been made to listen instead. Marcus stood firm through it all. No celebration, no speeches, just dignity, unchanged. For the first time, his actions were not questioned or reframed. They were acknowledged. Judge Robert Hayes documented the facts plainly. Marcus Johnson had acted with care, restraint, and judgment. Not as an exception, as a father doing what was right. Caleb returned to his routines without fear hanging over them. No looming meetings, no whispered doubts about where he belonged. Home felt steady again. Marcus did not need validation to keep going, but this time it came anyway. Evelyn was left with a truth she could no longer ignore. Control had failed where patience succeeded. Power had complicated what understanding made simple. Lily needed space, trust, and calm, not management. Lily Carter wasn't fixed. She was finally seen. And being seen changed everything. The room that once dismissed a black father learned something it could not unlearn. Silence had almost destroyed a child. Procedure had protected harm. This was not a misunderstanding. It was exposure. Marcus did not break the system by force. He broke its grip by refusing to break himself. Stories like this don't end when consequences are delivered. They linger in courtrooms, in schools, in moments where calm is mistaken for weakness and dignity is treated as defiance. They ask something of all of us. When injustice speaks quietly, who do we choose to ignore? And when the truth finally stands in front of us, will we listen? If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, comment, and subscribe to Black Community Struggles because these stories matter and silence helps no one.